evidently I wasn't accelerating fast enough because she zoomed up kind of right up behind my tail, then zipped around really fast. And as she was going by me, gave me the bird. And, I thought, maybe I was having a religious experience because I said to my wife, was that a nun? And she was dying laughing. And, and my kids were in the back seat and they were laughing. And she said, I really think it was. I think it really was a nun.
That's absolutely hilarious.
Yeah, so we get a kick out of that. Welcome to Palermo.
Welcome to the Where Have You Been podcast. I'm your host, Bill Roehm, and each week on the pod, I have conversations with incredible guests from all walks of life. Expect to hear funny, crazy, emotional, life-changing, and even sometimes life-threatening stories and experiences that will entertain and inspire you. As always, I appreciate your likes, subscriptions, ratings, and reviews wherever you are listening. It doesn't sound like much, but it truly helps the pod get to the ears of more people who may enjoy it. And check out the website, whybpodcast.com, for links to the socials where you can find pictures from the guests and their stories, and also buy merch if you're so inclined. Now let's get to this week's episode. Thank you for being here. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back into another episode of the Where Have You Been podcast. Where else would you rather be than right here with another incredible guest? First of all, I am your host, Bill Roehm, as always, but you probably already knew that. And this week, I'm super, super excited to talk with someone who probably the most well-established travel writer and photographer that we've definitely had on the show. And I would venture to say also currently entrepreneur as well. I have Paul on the show today. Welcome to the show, Paul. And if you would be so kind as to let our listeners know exactly who are you?
Sure, Bill. Well, thanks for having me on. I'll try to do the Benny Hill version, which is I kind of have an interesting career path. I spent years as a financial advisor before becoming a travel writer and a photographer. And, people say, how in the world, did that happen? Well, it's it came about for under a number of different circumstances, but my wife works in the travel business and I started out my career as a writer. So I've been a writer for my whole career. I started as a sports writer, believe it or not, and then transitioned into travel writing. So even though I owned a business, we had a retirement planning company, I still was doing writing and traveling quite a bit on the side. So I had sort of a side gig, or it was more like a passion gig, I guess you would say. And once we sold the retirement planning firm, I decided, hey, why don't I do that thing that I was always doing on the side anyway and make it official? And I didn't want to retire, so started the business that we call Travel Villa Guide. And I think it's kind of based around my own experience that I've now met many other people that kind of sort of fit this description. And, actually, by coincidence, I get a Facebook message today from a friend of mine. And it was a picture of her and her family. She has 4 kids and they were at a little family reunion or get together. And the caption said, "This happens so rarely these days, but when it does, my heart grows 6 sizes." And that's exactly kind of how I feel and where we are, our family is stage of life. And, the older we get, the harder and harder it gets, it becomes to get the people we love in the same place at the same time. The kids grow up, they move out, parents get older, friends get busy with their lives. And so I kind of started thinking, when I was planning this, what if for 1 or 2 unforgettable weeks, we could kind of create a different world, one where everyone who matters is under one roof and the world can wait, and where the stories you'll be telling years from now, start to unfold. And that's kind of the whole raison d'etre for Travel Villa Guide.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and let's be honest here. When you were talking about how the journey sort of happened, finances can be exciting, but travel is more exciting. I think more enjoyable, maybe.
I'll say, and I mean,
Yeah.
I hope we get into it, but there's a lot of parallels with things like legacy, inheritance, and heirlooms and things like that. That kind of go from finance and things that I was doing for decades in finance that I realized transitioned beautifully into travel. So we'll probably get into it as we chat.
Yeah. So, so you mentioned what the website is, and let's actually just put that out there. The website and any socials that you have. Let's just do that now before I forget.
Yeah, it's 3 words, Travel Villa Guide, but it's all together. So it's travelvillaguide.com. Very, very easy. That's the that's the website, and anybody's, if they hear anything today that sounds interesting, they're welcome to go check that out.
And so, really, what you're doing there is helping to facilitate not just a trip or a vacation for someone, but you're trying to help foster that family feeling, or maybe it's not even necessarily family, maybe it's friends, maybe whoever,
Yeah.
but whoever wants to be together and not have them have to book separate rooms, or if it's a large
Right.
gathering, you're not having to try to find some massive flight. Like this is kind of what you're doing, right?
Yeah. So the way I describe it, Bill, is I like to say, we create a world where families and close friends can celebrate life's most important moments. So whether that's 80th birthdays, 50th anniversaries, a family reunion, could be a college friends reunion. We do a lot of multi generational trips. That's a big thing. So anything where a group comes together that wants to be together, that's important. And it's not solo travel, it's not adventure travel. It's families and close friends celebrating, important events. And honestly, the important event is, hey, after 10 years of trying, we finally got together.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah, and I'll have the link obviously in the show notes for
Mm.
everybody as well. What kind of places have you helped people get to?
Yeah, so quite a few. I would say that, broad strokes, the most common destinations for our folks are Europe. So, ton of Italy. I would say the top ones are Italy, Greece, France, Spain, um, the UK, and then actually the Caribbean too. The Caribbean's pretty popular. A number of the countries in the Caribbean. Costa Rica has become more popular in recent years. That's kind of like an up and coming destination. But yeah, we've sent people, all over the place.
And just you don't have to get into all the nuts and bolts of everything that you do with all of your work that you put into this, but how just give me an idea of how much work it takes to plan something like this for a group. Just I know it's probably
Yeah,
different in every instance.
yeah. I would say, Bill, on average, our average group is like, I would say 10 to 16 people is probably like the average. And the hardest part of that is getting everybody together, right? Because in that group, you probably get people who are living, opposite ends of the country, maybe different countries. You've got different ages, quite often. So the amount of planning is crazy. And the what happens is, generally on these things, there's one planner, and that person is the point person. And they're always the point person, and they always have been, and I guess they always will be. The problem with being the point person is that you never really get to go on the vacation with everybody.
Mm-hmm.
You're there physically, but you're spending your time running around to make sure, do we have this thing booked? Is the car here? How are we going to get to dinner? Do we have reservations? It's a constant juggling. And, God forbid you're in a hotel. We purposely don't send our folks to hotels because when you're with a group, don't get me wrong, I love hotels, but when you're with a group, a hotel is a nightmare. If you got 15 people and everybody is in a different room on a different floor, and just to get everyone together, it requires, a camp counselor to to pull it all together. And then not to mention mealtime, right? You have, okay, everyone's on the phone. Where's Jimmy? Where's Abby? And
Yeah.
you try to herd cats, and then you know you do that, and then you get down there, and they say, "I'm sorry, we don't have a table for 15." Right? It's
It's
stuff.
brutal.
Yeah, it's brutal. So, to,
Sally's in the shower too long.
oh my God, yeah.
Fall asleep.
Has anybody seen Aunt Doris? When was the last time? When was the last time anybody saw Aunt Doris?
Oh gosh.
So so we take all that craziness off people's plates. Number one, by, sending them to a place that gives them the space in the room to be together without having to coordinate stuff. It's sort of like if you want to get everyone together, you just walk into the kitchen. So in the
Yeah,
planning
and
part,
I'm thinking too, like even when you get a bunch of couples together, and like
yeah,
one half of the couple is tired, but the other
yep,
one's not, and you feel
yeah,
bad leaving them,
yep.
especially if you're in a hotel. But if you're staying in the same place, it's so much easier to say, you know what, you lay down, I'll come back and check on you in a little bit. I'm going to go downstairs.
Yeah, it's you have it's wonderful. You have the space to gather, and you have the space to be by yourself if you want, right? Because everybody has their own room, so you have that benefit like you would in a hotel. But you have the gathering spaces that, yeah, if you're not the one taking the nap, maybe you want to hang out by the pool, or maybe you want to, sit in the garden and read a book, or whatever. But you have that option. And look, the whole reason that we're doing this trip is for us to be together. So let's have as much together time as we can. We can have coffee together in the morning. We can sit by the pool. We can have all our meals together. We can we don't have to, get pushed out of the restaurant at the end of the night. We can stay and open another bottle of wine, tell stories, have some laughs, go outside, sit under the stars. It's just so much more relaxing. It gives, optionality. It gives you a lot more
Yeah.
optionality and privacy and all the stuff. Like, look, the other thing is, we've all been there taking these trips. You go to a resort with a bunch of people and you realize, oh, we're not the only ones here. And, the first day at the pool, you say, oh my God, all the chairs are taken. We, we can't even sit down at the pool. So then the next morning, what do? You're up at 5 a.m., like before the sun, to try to fight for your chair
Yep.
at the pool.
Been there, done that.
Yeah, right.
Get that
And
cabana or whatever.
exactly, like you have to, sort of like, oh yeah, I'm on vacation, but I'm getting up earlier just to just to stake out my 2 feet by the
Right.
pool. Right?
And not to catch the sunrise or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I,
So
I think it's
yeah.
awesome what you're doing. I hope that people check it out. I think it's just I don't know of anyone else that I've heard of that does this form of travel planning for people. So I love it. I love it.
Yeah, great.
But
Thanks.
yeah. So again, I'll have everything will be in the show notes. People check it out if you're interested. I do want to know one of the things I like to ask my guests before we really get started into like the meat and potatoes, so to speak, of the episodes is how did travel become a thing in your life? When did that start for you as a child or
Yeah.
somewhere along the way? Or how did that become a thing for you?
This is an easy one, Bill. I married a Jersey girl, and this particular Jersey girl had travel in her blood, and she passed it on to me. Her dad worked for Exxon, He was an engineer and he traveled quite a bit. In fact, the first time I remember going to their house and meeting them, the first thing I noticed when I walked in the door was one of these giant Pan Am. Remember Pan Am, the airline?
Yes.
There was a giant Pan Am map that they had framed on a wall, and it had all little pins in all the little places that he had been. And there were a lot of pins. So he had traveled all over the world. And I know when my wife was a teenager, for example, they lived in Hong Kong for 2 years. And that became sort of a launching point for them to do a bunch of other travel to both Asia and Europe. And she just kind of fell in love with travel. I didn't have that experience growing up. I don't think I was on a plane until I was probably in high school. But when we got together, she was in the travel business, and that was a thing she was always going to do. And so she passed along that love of travel. And once I got a taste of it, it was hook, line, and sinker for me. And then, like I said, I had a chance to travel and write and do some things like that, which gave me a lot of great experiences. But my father-in-law, when he was about to turn 80, we were planning a family trip, and he made one request. He said, "Look, I'd like to, have something where we're all together, but I want to be under one roof so we can maximize our time together." And at the time, I kind of thought he was talking about convenience, but looking back, I think that kind of radically changed the way I think about group travel anyway. And just the difference of being all together and having the whole, I don't know, I guess we were gone for maybe 10 days or so. We just, had as much time as we wanted together. And it felt like we were just, in our own little world. And we all, went and did different things during the day, but we always would get together for the meals. And
That's
so it was a wonderful experience. And that kind of changed me in terms of, how to go about these things.
Yeah, it's very romantic in a way, actually. That the story of how that happened and kind of steered your direction of what you're doing now. What was
Yeah.
that first trip that you went on with her that was like, okay, I get it.
Well, I'll tell you, I know I really this one is etched into my memory, Bill, is we were married, well, coming up to be married for 10 years. And so my wife, in addition to living in Hong Kong, she also lived in Italy for a while. And she is madly in love with Italy. She's half Italian. And she declared that she couldn't be married to a man for 10 years who's never been to Italy. So she arranged a trip for our 10-year anniversary for us to go to Italy. And that was my first taste of Italy. And I'm happy to say that it was the first of many, many, because it was amazing. The thing that really sticks into my craw, because it led to so many things, is we stayed in a former papal retreat. And, the notion that, all priests take this vow of poverty, it doesn't, pertain to popes, because this was the craziest, nicest place I had ever seen. And it was like the summertime retreat of some popes that had been converted. And they, beside the fact it was beautiful, they did some amazing things, like the chef. So if you're at breakfast in the morning, for example, and the chef would wander in and she would say, "Hey, what are you feeling for dinner tonight?" And the first time it happened, she kind of like, "What do you mean?" Well, what? She said, "I'll make whatever you want." Well, what'd you like?
What?
And I was just looking at Lynn saying, "Is this for real?" And so, I kind of panicked, to be honest. I think I ordered lamb chops or something because I couldn't. It was like, you can have anything in the world.
Right.
I couldn't think of anything really fast. So, I mean, I love lamb chops, and I saw some sheep, so I said, "Oh, how about lamb chops?" She said, "Oh, I would love to make you lamb chops." But this went on the whole time we were there, so that was magical. They had things like their own wine. It was just like crazy stuff that I had never experienced before, and it was crazy good. And the other part of that story I'll tell you is um, the place that we stayed in was like a little. It was like a cross between a hotel room and a villa. It was separate from the main building, so it was our own little bungalow, maybe I'll call it. And but it was right next to a garden. And what we discovered on the first night, we had seen them walking around, but there were some peacocks on the property. And I don't know if you have experience with peacocks, but they can be pretty loud. And
Yes.
I guess in the old days they were used by armies would take peacocks with them because they were great. They would make a lot of noise if there was an intrusion. And believe me, when they go, you can't miss. It's not like, do I hear something? No,
Yeah.
you're, you're really hearing something. And there was a male peacock that had a very strong interest in the female peacock, and he was expressing that interest at like 5 in the morning with with a series of calls. I'll call them calls. I'll be nice, but they, made you jump, out of your bed like you thought, oh, someone's having their fingernails pulled out or something,
Yeah.
right?
Oh
So,
gosh.
the first night we're lying, wide awake, heart's beating a million miles an hour, and this peacock is still going on and on. And finally, I don't know if he had success or what, but he finally stopped. But I was awake. I mean, I was done. My wife,
Ah,
can she has the remarkable ability to be able to just, fall right back to sleep. So I said to her, you know what? I'm going to go. I'm going to grab my camera and I'm going to go. The sun's going to come up and let's take some shots around, at sunrise. All right. See you later. And so I was out walking around, and then I don't know, a couple of hours later, I see someone loading up a car to depart, and I just kind of strolled over. I didn't know if they were Italian, American, French. I didn't know anything, but I thought I just would say good morning. So I said hello, good morning, and it turned out to be an American. And we chatted a little bit, and he said, "Hey, just out of curiosity, how did you how did you pick this place, this retreat?" And I said, "Oh, my wife actually did it. She handled it. I believe she booked it through a company in Virginia, and it's amazing. We're really very pleased to be here." Long story short, it turned out that his wife owned the company through which we had booked the property.
oh wow.
And what's even crazier is I had mentioned, I said before we had kids, my wife was in the travel business. She lived in Italy. She speaks some Italian. Anyway, and he said, well, is she ever thinking about going back to work? And I said, well, yeah, actually, we're just been having that conversation recently. And he said, well, would she ever consider talking to my wife? Because we're looking for somebody who has experience with Italy and, maybe not full time, but eventually full time, but certainly part time to start. Would she be interested in something like that? So I was trying to be very cool because I knew that this would be like a dream job for my wife.
Hmm.
But I said, yeah, I'll have a chat with her when she gets up. It'd be great. I'll take a card or something like that, and she can always reach out. Anyway, when I went back and told my wife, she was beyond thrilled. And long story short, she did end up taking a job with them, and it led us on many world journeys to go visit hotels that they represented, hotels across Italy and some other places. And it led us on many, many adventures.
It's
So a
such a
bit of
beautiful.
serendipity thanks to the peacock. But yeah, that's how my international travels began.
That's maybe one of the more unique stories that we've ever opened with. Pretty fantastic. Okay, so I have to say this to every guest. I guess I don't have to. It's my show, but this is a point where I asked you just to, and you can answer this question any way you'd like to. You take it for what it's worth. I know you've been a lot of places, but
Sure.
Paul Partridge, where have you been?
Where have I been? All right. Well, how broad do you want to go on that, Bill? Because the answer is a lot of places.
It is. I've seen a
Yeah.
list.
Yeah.
Some
I
of it
don't know,
anyway.
probably 40 countries or so, but most of the countries of Europe. I've been to Australia. I've been to many countries, Mexico, Central America, Costa Rica, Ecuador, Panama. I've been to five of the seven continents. How about that?
Amazing.
Yep. Been to China, been to Hong Kong, even, Canada, Mexico.
I do want to mention, because one of the places that I noticed on your list, and as we are recording this episode will be out on this coming Sunday, which is the 16th of August. But
Yeah.
as we're recording this, Colombia is dealing with a massive earthquake, lots of lives lost. So I just want to mention, hearts and thoughts and prayers and everything. I hope things are getting better by the time this airs. But I'm sure there will be a ton of work to do there. So
Yeah, and to the same point, like a couple of weeks ago, Bill, tragically the same thing happened in Greece, in a place that we've been to and have developed a special attraction to and affinity for, is Paros, the island of Paros. They had some wildfires and unfortunately affected one of the people that we know there. So yeah, in fact we were desperately trying to contact him to find out, one, is he okay, and number two, what could we do, to help. So yeah, there's a lot of that going on, but yeah, definitely thoughts and prayers to yeah, both of those countries.
yeah, for sure. I actually have a friend who's in Colombia who is right in that area. And I had a little bit of a moment today too, where I was like, I sent a message to her, and you can tell when it gets delivered, right?
Yeah.
And she's the one who told me that it happened, like right when it happened. And
Oh,
I was sending her message and it wouldn't go through, and it was like, oh no. And it
yeah.
was just, I'm sure there was just service lost for a little while, but I'm sure ideally she's okay and everything's. I mean, she's heartbroken, but
Oh,
but they'll get through it. Everyone will rally together, I'm sure, with each other. So, anyways, I didn't mean to take this in a sit in a sad or negative direction, but
no, it's real life,
it
and
is.
the nice thing is that, I mean, I'm always amazed at the resilience, of folks. And we there's a place in Italy that we especially like, in Umbria, called Noto, and they had an earthquake. I don't know, probably 10 years ago, and they're just getting to the point where they've kind of put the pieces back together, and it's like better than ever. But we were there right after it happened, and just sort of the esprit de corps of people, just, everybody comes out of the woodwork to try to help and put the pieces back together, and it's really quite inspiring.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think that in times of tragedy, we really see the best of humanity. And it's
100%.
too bad that it takes that for it to happen, and it doesn't
Yes.
just happen more often when things are good. But
Yeah,
it's glad to see that it's there. So,
I agree.
so, well, let's take us somewhere happy. Where should we
Yeah.
go, Paul?
Yeah. I know, there's so many.
Where Tell me, I mean, honestly, like, yeah, you've been so many places. Obviously, I know you have a wealth of stories, I'm sure, from Italy. Maybe we kind of circle back to Italy if that's okay with you, or
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell you no if that's where you'd like to start, but
Well, I mean, Italy's always great. One of the places that I've really fallen kind of head over heels over is Sicily. Now, I like, if you can drop me anywhere in Italy and I'm going to be happy, but I was surprised at how much, I really loved Sicily. We went to, really, as the celebration, we did a family heritage trip. As I mentioned earlier, my wife is half Italian, and her mom was from, or her mom's family was from, a little village called Camerata in Sicily. And after she passed, we made it um, our mission to get there. She had talked about it so much. And between Lynn's aunts and her mom, we had heard the stories, for years. And we really just wanted to go and see and kind of honor her at the same time. And when we went, I'll tell you two things that pop in my head. We landed in Palermo, and again, been to many places. I live outside of New York City, so I know a thing or two about traffic. I have driven in Rome. I have driven in places that are notoriously famous for crazy traffic, and I had never seen anything like Palermo. It's not so much the traffic, but the drivers are very, let's say, what's a good way to put it? They're very free.
Okay.
It's
Get it.
not. We don't necessarily have traffic, rules and regulations that anyone feels obligated to adhere to, and they do like to drive quickly, which adds another layer to it. But I don't want to drag the story out. I was kind of in my mind getting to Camerata, and the one of the first things I remember is driving out of Palermo and getting on the highway and getting flipped off by a nun.
Why?
And my kids
Why?
were in there. Yeah.
What could you have possibly done?
And it's one of those little, like smaller than a Beetle kind of Italian cars, it's almost it's almost like a ladybug, with wheels. And
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
yeah, and evidently I wasn't accelerating fast enough, because she zoomed up kind of right up behind my tail, then zapped around really fast. And as she was going by me, gave me the bird. And, I thought, maybe I was having a religious experience, because I said to my wife, was that a nun? And she was dying laughing. And and my kids were in the back seat, and they were laughing. And she said, I really think it was. I think it really was a nun.
That's absolutely
So,
hilarious.
yeah, so we get a kick out of that. He was welcome to Palermo.
I wonder how many Hail Marys that cost her.
Yes, or us.
Oh,
So
gosh.
that driving experience was, I did want to put, a little relic on the dashboard, seeing the way everybody was driving, because I thought it might be something that might come in handy. It felt like, at any second you were gonna crash, or be made to crash. Anyway, we made it to Camerata. One of the things I'll say about our service that's kind of neat is we assign a local concierge to the house. So it does a number of things. It's especially valuable to people who are going to a country where they don't speak the language, or maybe it's their first time in the country or whatever. So to have a local concierge who makes all the arrangements for you, who can give you the inside info about, avoid this beach, go to this beach, or here's a good restaurant to go to that's not going to be crowded. This tourist trap is not worth going to. That kind of stuff it's invaluable. And again, it allows you to be on vacation with your favorite folks, instead of being the planner. But the concierge that we had in this house, we had rented a villa, and the concierge we had knew a guide who happened to be good friends with the mayor of Camerata. So he arranged for this gentleman to be our guide. And, we went there. He didn't say anything to us. He didn't give us any, he didn't tip us off to anything. We were expecting a nice day exploring Camerata. He had taken us to Agrigento the day before, into all the wonderful sights there. So we had spent a day with him already. But when we arrived to the town hall, waiting for us was the mayor and an entourage that included some assistants and maybe some people in government there that we didn't know everyone's job, but they had the press there. They had the local newspaper and photographer, there because the Americans are here. And first thing he did is he gave us a grand tour of the town hall. And then he spent the entire day with us. And
Wow.
he took us down the streets into the places where my wife's mother's relatives lived because he knew the name.
Oh my gosh.
And he said, your great aunt lived here and your other great aunt lived there. And that's where your uncle lived. And your mother would have known this person and that kind of thing. So as you can imagine, that was spectacular. He threw a big lunch for us. And to have that, experience, number one, but to have it with your kids and for them to see, and get connected
Yeah.
back generations, live and in person. Yeah, it was just amazing. And it never would have happened if, our concierge hadn't have found or known this guide that was connected to the mayor. So it was a bit of serendipity, but we try to create the space and you know, uh, put people with the homes that have these kind of insider connections and at least knowledge that can open the door to some of these moments we call them.
Yeah. How old were your kids then?
Let's see, they were teenagers.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I definitely, we touch on this a lot on the podcast, but I just think it's so important for kids, especially like that age, like teenage, really starting to understand, when they go somewhere, like maybe they get it more than a younger child does, but
yeah.
it's just so important for children to be exposed to things like that. So,
Yeah, and I think there's a direct line of sight there, Bill, because I'll just tell you in the case that, my two daughters who were teens at the time, one of them went on to live in Spain for a year and Italy for half a year, speaks Spanish, speaks Italian, and my other daughter works in the travel business and she works at the same company as my wife does. So I think that travel bug, that definitely seeped in by having, these kinds of experiences.
yeah, absolutely. And we've talked about some of that offline too, with like the way my kids are, and just yeah. I mean, and I think it touches everyone differently, and maybe some not as much as others, but
Yeah.
there's definitely something that happens for sure. So, well,
Yeah.
that's amazing, that
Yeah.
experience.
And I mean, I'm happy to share a couple more Italy stories if you want to hear them, or we can move
I,
on to something else. Or
no, I'd love to. Absolutely.
as we were talking, as I was telling that story, two other couple other things popped into my head. One is I will just mention this because for your audience, if they're looking for something unique to do in Italy, we went and I've also sent some people there to the Palio. Have you heard of the Palio?
I don't think so.
Yeah, so the Palio is one of the world's oldest horse races, and it takes place in the city of Siena. And they they race on bareback in the town center.
Okay, I have heard of this. Yes,
Yeah.
but it's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, and there's a
And it's,
tremendous.
it's all the towns are kind of areas against each other, right?
Actually, you know what it is? It's the neighborhoods
That's what I mean.
in Siena.
The
Yeah.
neighborhoods.
Yes, they're called Contrada, and again through through concierge help, we actually got invited to. We were adopted by one of the Contrada called Aquila, eagle, and we got to. So the horse. So each neighborhood has a horse that represents the neighborhood, and that's the race is almost. I don't want to say it's life and death, but maybe it's more important than life and death.
And isn't it sort of like not necessarily the neighborhood that you live in today? It's necessarily the neighborhood that you grew up in.
Yeah,
Because I feel like I've heard
yeah.
stories of like husband and wife are like split up for the day because they're rooting against each other.
It can happen. It depends on how you decide to play it, right? So,
Yeah.
like, for me, if you did it by states, I live in New Jersey. I said I married a Jersey girl, so I live in Jersey, but I grew up in Rhode Island and Massachusetts. So it was by states. I would, maybe I would be for New Jersey, or maybe I would be for Rhode Island or something, right? It'd be kind of the similar thing. But the rivalries go back, 500, 600 years or more. And there's been a lot of chicanery, tied into these races where horses and or jockeys have been kidnapped. They may or may not have been drugged. They may or may not have had large sums of money bet on them. There's a very interesting sideshow, we'll call it, to these horse races. But so it's a 3-day event. It actually happens twice every summer, and it turns out to be a brilliant idea because it draws a lot of people. So it's a great for the economy. But for these 3 days, the best thing that can happen is that your horse in your neighborhood wins. The second best thing that can happen is that your enemy, every neighborhood has an enemy, that your enemy loses. So as part of the dealings that go on in back rooms, etc., sometimes and the horses get drawn by a lot. So you don't raise and bring in your own horse. There's a pool of horses, and then by lot, sometimes people think it's by chance. Sometimes people think it might not be by chance, but the horses get selected and assigned to the neighborhood. And you may decide that, oh man, our horse doesn't have a chance to win. So what are we going to do? We're going to align with another neighborhood so that our enemy neighborhood loses.
Okay.
So that might be, trying to, when they line up at the beginning, you try to line up in such a way that maybe you're going to block another horse, or you trigger the gate too early so that they have to do a restart and everybody has to realign again, or you don't let a horse in on a turn or something like that. So there's all this strategy that's going on. It happens the riders are on bareback, and it's in a town square, and it's not square. It's very lopsided. It's an old town, and so there's some weird angles that jut out. They put padding on it, so if the horses run into it, they don't get seriously hurt. But if that happens, lots of times the jockey gets knocked off. And the rule is, if the horse finishes the race with or without a jockey, the horse wins. So there's many races that the horse wins without a jockey.
Oh my gosh.
So we got, like I said, we got invited to be part of one of the neighborhoods, which meant that we got to go to the dinner. So before the race, there's a practice race the night before. And then after that, every neighborhood has a big dinner where a big part of the neighborhood shows up and eats together. So it was in this, I want to say like a church that had been partially, I don't know if it had been bombed out or what, but it was just like some of the walls were still standing, but the rest of it wasn't. And it looked like a scene out of Harry Potter because they had, you can imagine, they had these tables that went on forever because you had literally, I don't know, they must have had, 2,000 people there.
Jeez, I was going to say hundreds.
Yeah, no, it was well beyond hundreds. So these tables go on forever. They're all set up in, of course, chairs, but they had lights and there was a stage, and the dignitaries are up there, and then they bring in the jockey to great fanfare, and that jockey gets toasted and sung to and paraded around, and young women come in and dance, and it's quite a spectacle. And we thought that our horse didn't have a chance of winning just by watching the face of the jockey during the dinner, because instead, if that was happening to me, I'd feel like king for the day. he looked terrified. And, they're so passionate about this that, sometimes, if they don't think the jockey does a good job, they're not necessarily happy with him. And things have happened to the jockeys, let's just say. So he was looking terrified. And I thought, oh boy, he knows he doesn't have a chance in this race. But the experience of eating with, 1,000 or 2,000 people singing songs and dancing and drinking wine. I mean, it really was absolutely one of the spectacular things arranged, as I said, by the concierge. And then also, she arranged for us. The last thing you want to do is there's in the center of the square is where the most number of people can fit. And once you go in there, it's like, I don't know if you've ever been to the Kentucky Derby, but they have that center area where generally it's like college kids go in there because, once you go in there, you're stuck in there for, like all day. And it's the same thing in the center of the square here. So we knew we didn't want to do that because you literally have to stand there for hours because they do prior to the race, they have I think it's about a 3-hour parade
Oh my
where
gosh.
the entire town dresses up in the costumes of the original Palio. So, you have these elaborate costumes and medieval garb on male and female, and you have the trumpeters, and you have the flag throwers, and giant oxen pulling big carts and a zillion horses, music. It's really something. But that goes for 3 hours in the hot sun, and then they have the Italian cavalry comes in. Anyway, by the time the race is run and finishes, you're stuck in that center. They don't let anybody in or out. So you're in there for, maybe the better part of 5 hours. So our crew said, well, we, not being able to get to a bathroom for 5 hours is not going to be possible. Anyway, so it was arranged for us to be on the outside and to get to our seats, which was on a sort of what looked like kind of like a high school
Mm-hmm.
bleacher kind of thing. They were bleachers. But to get to them, you had to go through this. It was a restaurant and then up some stairs, winding around, and then you had to crawl out a window
Oh my gosh.
to get to the bleachers to watch the parade and then eventually the race. So the Palio, by the way, I mean, if just for your entertainment on a Friday night, Netflix has a documentary. I believe it's called The Palio that is extremely entertaining, tells this whole story, shows the race, shows the backstory, shows the history of it. And it's really terrific. And I recommend that to anybody who thinks that this sounds interesting. So,
Very cool and noted.
yep, the Palio, that was one of our great trips.
I need to know though, did your race, how did your horse do?
The jockey got thrown off.
Oh gosh. And did the horse
Actually-
finish though?
The horse finished in a very lackadaisical way.
Okay.
He was
Did not turn out well then.
he was not in the running to win.
So your jockey was foreshadowing.
Yeah, I think he knew that. I guess in some ways he was relieved that he got tossed because it kind of there's a built-in excuse there.
Mm-hmm.
What can I do? I got thrown.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if anything, like actually it happened right in front of us where we were standing. It happened right in front of us where we got thrown. And the first thing, of course, is, oh my God, is he okay? And he immediately got up, and we realized, okay, he's fine. All right, now that he's fine, it's all good. He's gonna be fine. He wasn't gonna win anyway, so we were just happy that he was okay. But yeah, that was an amazing experience. I was thinking about why, you're getting me telling these stories, Bill, and as I tell 'em, it makes me think of another one.
I'm not doing anything here, buddy. That's
No, I know.
friend.
So yeah,
No, I love it.
you're triggering, you're triggering all sorts of things. We have, I was thinking of the first time I was in Rome, and it was it was just my wife and I, and it kind of it reminds me of, one of the things that, if anyone who's ever traveled with a group, is one thing that's very obvious, and that's that people have very different ideas of the perfect vacation.
Yes.
So for years, planning trips and trying to make them better and better for people, I had this sort of riddle that I was trying to always solve, which was, how do you plan one trip that makes 12 different people happy? And through lots of, experimenting over the years, we invented something called travel type matching. And it's really based on the idea of, well, two things. Number one is that we figured out there's four different travel types, similar to people take personality tests.
Mhm.
Sometimes when you apply for a job or you take a new job, they
That's
give you like,
exactly where I was thinking of that from, is from applying for a job. Yep.
yeah, to give you, I think it's called like Briggs Statin or something like that, or that's one of them anyway. So my thought was, let's apply that to travel, and as a way to try to get to, if you're on a trip and, you're the type that likes to hang by the pool, and you're traveling with friends or relatives that like to do 3 museums before noon, one of you or both of you are gonna be unhappy, and it also gets to this thing, I don't know if you ever had this yourself or you ever heard it from folks that come back from a vacation saying, "Oh my gosh, I need a vacation from my vacation."
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So to me, that's, it's generally one of two things. One is the easy answer is, hey, you tried to do too many things in too few days. That's common and that's easy to figure out and that's easy to fix. The other is there's a misalignment. So, I don't want to say you were forced, but you were brought along on activities that you might not have picked if, left to your own devices, right? So it's it's more exhausting going to spending 3 hours in a museum if you hate museums,
Mhm.
right? And, that can be said for a lot of things. But so we came up with travel type matching, and we had, there's four different types. And I'll give you a kind of a quick recap of them. So the first one is called immersers. And an immerser wants to understand the place inside and out. And they're the ones reading every museum plaque, and they're always asking the guide a lot of questions.
Mhm.
And, you've gone on a 2 hour, guided museum experience, and everyone's looking at their watch saying, it's time for lunch. And the immerser is going, but I have another question for the guide.
Mhm.
So that's the immerser. It makes me think to my wife is an immerser. I am not, but first time we were in Rome together, we were we were at the Pantheon, and we sat there, and that's have you been? That's one of the most amazing structures
Yes.
I've ever seen in my life.
Yes, I have.
Yeah,
It is
it's it's
incredible.
it's incredible, right? I mean, it's 2,000 years old, and they had an unsupported concrete dome in, like, the year 100 AD.
Mind-boggling.
Mind-boggling. And the oculus, the devil's hole at the top, that the light comes in, or if it rains right inside. And but the way the light goes around is, the columns are amazing, the bronze doors are amazing. Anyway, the Pantheon's an amazing place. And I was just sitting there like, my jaw open staring at it. And my wife, she had brought, I don't know, 3 different guidebooks, and she was going through, the history and how it was made and who was around and the architect and every fact you could possibly imagine.
When she goes into a place like that, if they have like a little gift area, does she buy the books?
She's already has them, Bill.
Okay.
She's pre-ordered them.
Okay.
She doesn't need to buy them there. She'll
Okay.
buy a magnet when she's there. That's
No,
about it.
I got it.
So,
She's the leader of the immersers.
she's the leader of the immersers.
Oh.
So, but after about 20 minutes, I said, Lynn, would you mind if we went in? And
This was the whole time was outside.
yeah, we were standing outside and she was reading, I mean, fascinating stuff. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But that was feeding her brain and what she, craved to know. And so she's an immerser. I'm an experiencer. That's the second one. And
And to be clear, we're not making fun of Mrs. Partridge. We're
oh gosh, no, she's
just making a little light.
it's
I should say I
everybody.
was.
She would, I mean, if she told a story, she would say, it would be from her perspective would be, and I had all this great stuff and I had done all this great research, and he was like in a hurry to get in.
Right.
So, and she, she's equally right.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's the 4 types. It's important to know what everybody likes. So an experiencer is somebody who relies on their senses, right? So they want to see it, taste it, smell it, experience it for themselves. And they're the type of person that kind of wanders off, and you go, oh, where did Paul go? And then, comes back later with a local fisherman who you've invited to dinner. You know, so that's
That's a
kind of
true
me.
story, I imagine.
Yeah, could be. And then there's the adventurers, and they come alive through activity, right? So for them, if they're not hiking or kayaking or climbing to the best view, they get restless. They're just like, I got to do something. And that's the person that says, I'll meet you at 7 in the morning and actually means it,
Mm-hmm.
right? They're the adventurers. And then the last one is called the relaxers. And you can kind of imagine they're they found the perfect chair by the pool on day 1. And if you want to find them on day 7, they're right in that same chair.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's all they need. They need a beach or a pool or something. For them, the vacation begins the moment they arrive. They say, success. We're here. And now I'm going to just relax. Where, other people say, no, wait, this has just begun, right? Now we're going to do all the fun stuff. So,
I think if I was to self-diagnose,
yeah,
I think I would say that I am truly an explorer who thinks he wants to be an immerser, because
yeah.
I'm sort of like it's sort of at the end though. So I'm the explorer who goes, okay, I didn't do the research ahead of time, but now I need to know more.
Yes. That's
Oh,
why
and I
guide.
never do, but I want to.
That's why we love guides so much.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And the truth is, honestly, first of all, most groups include all 4 different types, and honestly, most people are more than one, right? So it's not, sometimes, like I'll speak for myself. Sometimes I'm an experiencer, sometimes I'm a relaxer, right? Depending on the
Oh, that's
occasion.
experiencer, not explorer. I said the wrong thing.
Oh, no worries.
You know what I meant.
Yeah, sometimes I'm an adventurer, right? But I mean, if I had to just pick one, I would say I'm an experiencer.
Mm-hmm.
But what we decided and what we thought, well, we've come closer to solving the riddle, is that we say the best trips give everyone something they're excited about, and then still bring everyone together for the moments that matter most, right? So the way that a lot of people do it is they'll have breakfast together in the morning, and then everybody goes off, and does their thing. And then meet around the pool in the afternoon, maybe for happy hour, or if not, we all have dinner together and we all tell the stories of what we did that day. So that way, you know, everybody's kind of finding their happy place, and at the same time, we're still honoring, the number one reason that we're doing this trip is that we can all be together.
And
So
honestly, it's brilliant, not just because of the fact that everyone kind of gets to do whatever they're most inclined to want to do, but the whole thing that you just mentioned it, the whole thing of when everyone comes back together and gets to share their adventures of the day, even if the adventure was sitting by the pool and watching, somebody swim or, they
yeah,
had a
it's
great
some great
cocktail or
movie.
whatever it
Yeah,
was. But
yeah,
this
yeah,
sharing your experiences, just like we do on the show, that's the coolest part for me. I mean, besides experiencing things yourself, but I
yeah,
love hearing and telling the stories.
yeah, and that's what starts to stick in the old memory bank too, right? It's like, I think about, again, I can only say my own experiences, but there's plenty of times that we take trips, and so we do a family trip every year, and it's my wife's brother and sister and their spouses, our family, our kids, my son-in-law. We do one of those every year, and sitting around the dinner table, everybody telling their stories. It seems like every year I hear a different story. I learn something else from, a family member. Like, I never knew that about you. I've known you for 30, 40 years and I didn't even know that.
Hmm.
And yeah, that's the great part of it.
And then that time sitting around together sharing the stories becomes a story and a memory, which I just love it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, I always go back to the way most people, when they're planning a trip, it's always like, what's the first question they ask? What's the first question anybody asks?
Well, depends on the person, I think.
Well, my experience is it's,
How
where are
much?
we going?
Where are we going? And then, yeah, what's the
Right?
budget?
Yeah. But it usually starts with the destination. And,
Yeah, you're right.
and look, why do we travel in the first place? Right? To see new places, to experience new things. And yeah, I love those things too. But the trips that stay with us aren't just about discovering new places or checking things off of a checklist. To me, they're about sharing them with the people we love. It's great to have a view, but sharing the view makes it better.
Hmm.
It's great to have a delicious dinner or amazing meal, but sharing the meal is better. Sharing the laughter is better.
Hmm. Yeah.
In creating those stories that, you'll reminisce about years from now when you're sitting around, at Thanksgiving or whatever. So, when we're doing these things, another thing that, kind of latched on to the trying to solve the question of how do you have one trip that makes 12 people happy is the first question that we have when somebody comes to us is not, where you're going, it's who's coming. So we want to know who's coming, is this the first time the family's been together in years? Are you celebrating a special birthday or a special anniversary? Tell us about who's coming and why. We want to know the why, right? Is this the trip where the grandkids finally get to spend a week with their cousins, that kind of stuff. And once we understand that, choosing the destination becomes easier. And also choosing where you stay becomes easier because we're gonna serve that reason, that occasion. And look, if you just it makes sense if you think about it, because if you're celebrating grandma's 80th birthday, that looks a lot different
Hmm.
than college friends coming together, after 10 years.
Without a doubt. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, that's why we're trying to do we're trying to solve the problems before they happen, Bill.
Oh, I truly, I said it before. I think it's brilliant. I really do. I think it's a really awesome idea, and I'm shocked if somebody hasn't thought of it before, but I'm glad that you did, because I think it's really awesome and a great unique way to look at things, especially for big groups. So
Yeah, I
listen,
think it.
I'm looking at the clock. I cannot believe we're already over an hour 10, or around an
Oh my
hour
God!
10.
Whoa, where did that go?
I know, it happens. So I would say we probably have one or two, time for a couple more before we get into the final five questions that I always wrap with.
Hmm.
Take me. I love Italy. We can stay in Italy. But
Yeah.
is there anywhere else, like one of your favorite stories or experiences from anywhere else in the world that you've been? And I promise you, you're coming back on the show sometime down the road, because we didn't touch on anything. So
No, we just get started here.
I know.
Yeah, I'll tell you. I mentioned Paros earlier, and I'll tell you, I can tell you a story about that. And again, it kind of, I don't mean to be, you know, clubbing this idea over the head too much, but it gets back to the concierge again.
Hmm.
Most people, I think, I probably should have said this earlier, but I think when I say the word concierge, I think people think, oh yeah, they make restaurant reservations or they book tickets or maybe they arrange a car service for you or something like that, right? And yes, they do those things and ours do those things as well. But to me, that's not where the greatest value lies. To me, the greatest value is, especially if you go into a place either that you've never been before or a foreign country. And it's like having a local friend who's like already done all the homework for you.
Hmm.
And, when you go to even a foreign city that you've never been to, or I mean, a city in the United States, right? The first time you've ever been to, wherever, San Francisco or whatever it is, the first time you go there, if you have a friend in town who can show you around, it makes such a world of difference. And, especially overseas, right? If the person, they speak the language, they know the local customs, they know, they can help you get settled. And the other side of the coin is if something, is amiss, they can take care of it.
Right.
So, if you're in Greece in August and you rent a house, maybe you rent a house through Airbnb or something like that, and you get there on a Friday, and it might be over 100 degrees, and let's say the air conditioning goes out, and you've got 12 people, 12 unhappy people, and it's a Friday. You don't speak Greek. You don't know the owner of the house. You don't know where the owner of the house even lives. He or she could be in Greece, could be down the street, or they could be in Athens, or they could be in Istanbul or London, who knows where, New York. You have to find the owner, and then they have to solve the problem from wherever they are on a Friday afternoon on an island in Greece. Let me tell you, that problem is not going to get solved for days if you're
Hmm.
lucky.
Hmm.
And if you're not lucky, it may not get solved at all, or it may get solved, on the last day that you're there. And to be able to have someone on the scene who you can just say, hey, as you can see, the air conditioning's out. Do you think you could have that taken care of for us? We're going to the beach. That is a whole different, that's a life-saving sentence that you can say.
Oh, for sure.
It matters quite a bit. Anyway, I didn't mean to get too askew on that one, but it relates to this particular story about the first time we went to Paros. It was a multi-generational trip, and it was one of those planes, trains, and automobiles just to get there, Bill.
Hmm. Hmm.
So we got there, we were completely exhausted,
Yep.
and we dropped our bags and we headed to the nearest beach, and we all just laid on the beach and fell asleep. And about 90 minutes later, I woke up and I was completely covered in sand, and I had sand in my hair and in my ears and probably in places I probably shouldn't mention on a podcast. But and everybody else, I looked around, I was the first one awake. Everybody else looked the same. and it looked like the sandstorm scene from like Lawrence of Arabia. You know?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah. And later we met our concierge and we said, look, not for nothing, but are all the beaches on Paris like this? And she just started giggling. And then she told us about the 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 Meltemi winds and how they wreak havoc during certain times of the year in on certain sides of the island. So in July and August, they run especially strong. And if you're trying to do a windsurfing, you happen to love it. But if you're trying to sit on a beach and enjoy the beach, you absolutely hate it. So she schooled us on, which beaches to avoid, which sheltered coves would be, calm and peaceful and also devoid of crowds. And some days we had the beach almost entirely to ourselves. And listen, I live in New Jersey, so a beach that has, 6 people on it is my idea of paradise.
Mm-hmm.
And, sometimes the best local advice is the advice that saves you from making the wrong decision before you even know it's the wrong decision,
For sure.
you know? So I kind of look at the concierge as somebody who's like protecting your experience. You've put a lot of, time, effort, and money, frankly, into creating this. And, you just want to be focused on the people that you came to be with. And they kind of protect that, if that makes sense.
Oh, for sure. No, that's awesome. And I don't know that I've ever really worked with something like that with a concierge, but it's definitely something that I'm going to keep in mind going forward, depending on what kind of a trip that I'm taking, I suppose. But
Yeah. Yeah. Especially for the groups. Yeah.
let's do
Yeah.
this. And
Yeah.
it hurts my heart to say that we should probably head to the final 5 questions, but I'm also
Okay.
excited because we have a little bit of extra time. So you can feel free to expand as much as you'd like to on these answers. And so, if you have some fantastic stories and experiences that go along with these, then by all means.
Yeah.
So,
Sure.
and you don't know these questions, correct?
I do not, unless I do like a Carmack, the amazing Carmack from Johnny Carson, and try to predict them. But
No, no need. Hopefully, most of them are easy for you, but none of them are difficult, unless
all
it's
right,
just you having to make up your mind. So, okay,
shoot.
let's start off with question number one.
Yeah.
And we did not really talk about food, so I'm interested to know what your answer is going to be like in this for this. So, question number one, and I say this every time. I phrase the question very specifically. So, question one is: of all the places in the world that you have ever been, what has been one or two of your favorite meal experiences that you've ever had?
Yeah. Well, I told you one, and I'll tell you another one. The one that has to rank at the top is the one in when we were at that papal retreat where the chef comes by and says, "What would you like to eat today?"
Gosh, yeah.
Yeah, so that's the first thing that pops in my mind, and I'm gonna go the opposite end of the spectrum, Bill, on the other one, and tell you about the greatest sandwich I ever had.
Oh, please.
Yeah,
Love sandwiches.
yeah. So that was on the island of Capri, and excuse me, again, my wife and I, and we took the ferry over, and we were famished when we got there. We were like, we had planned a hike. We had some things that we wanted to do, including a hike, but we were both saying, "Oh my God, we got to eat something before we go on this hike." So we just randomly stopped in this small little, I don't know, if you would call it even a deli or something. It was like a little family run cafe, I guess. And just ordered prosciutto and mozz, and
Mm,
they had homemade bread.
you have me already.
Oh my God. And we sat on a bench overlooking the ocean, and we made more sounds eating these sandwiches that, I think people were stopping and going, "What are they doing? What are, what, what are those two up to?" Because we were just like, "This is amazing." And we didn't want it to end. It was like, you know, can we just keep going? Yeah, that was great. That was the single greatest sandwich ever. And I can, to the point where I can think of the second best, and it also was in Italy and actually just happened this year. But yes, I went from you can eat anything you want in the whole wide world to how about a sandwich?
And just unbelievable. And I'm so glad, and I know there's others out there that are like me, but and it's like I can like judge myself on how good the food is that I'm eating. Like if I have, say a steak and it's
Yeah.
really good. I mean, it's
Yeah.
really good. I still know that it's not one of the best things I've ever eaten because I have made those noises that I haven't forced them out. They just happen.
They just happen.
You just
It's
you can't stop. I mean,
it's
it's
involuntary. Yeah.
man. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've had those. I
Yeah.
envy those experiences because I've had them and I want them every time I eat. But then it
I
wouldn't be as
know,
pleasurable.
right?
So
Yeah.
that's so incredible. Okay.
Mm.
Well, question number 2 is completely different.
Okay.
And question number 2 is difficult for some people, and maybe you don't have an answer. That has happened, but
Yeah.
give it a shot. Question number 2
Yeah.
is of all the places in the world that you have ever been,
Yeah.
even if I came to you and said, Paul, here is a free trip, take whoever you'd like, go enjoy yourself, you would say, no, thank you. I don't want to go back for whatever reason.
Oh, wow. Well, the the easy answer is Cleveland, but,
Ah,
um,
that is an easy answer, especially if I'm from Pittsburgh, but go ahead.
I'm not gonna I'm not gonna do that to my friends in Ohio. No, and actually that's not true 'cause I do like Cleveland.
Yeah, me too, actually. Shh.
You know what? This might sound like a even stranger answer, but I think I might say Las Vegas, Bill.
Okay. It has been
Mm.
used before, which is there's nothing
Oh,
wrong
really?
with that. But
Oh,
I
gotcha.
get it. But I get it. Tell me
Yeah.
why though, for you.
I'm just not that first experience when you walk into the first casino and you walk through it, I just wanted to just keep walking. It's not me. It's not my and just the whole thing is just not me. And ironically, my wife is there as we speak.
And you're not.
And I and I'm happy not to be there. She's there on business, although she wouldn't be there either if it was up to her.
I gotcha. Okay. Very fair answer. And I completely understand. And even people who have gone there and have enjoyed it have said, yeah, but I've enjoyed it. And that's good enough. I don't need to go
No,
back.
yeah, yeah.
So I get it.
No, look,
I get it.
there's no right or wrong answer, I don't think there. I
No.
mean, I think about, like a polarizing city for me is I happen to love Venice, but I've met so many people who don't like it at all.
And is it usually because of the crowds and maybe it's a little
Yeah.
smelly sometimes if they go at the wrong time or
Yeah.
something like
I
but
think Venice is a place that it really can depend on when you go.
oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I've
Mm.
only been once and I didn't even
Yeah.
care about the crowds. That didn't bother me a bit. It just was
Yeah.
so beautiful.
Yeah, to me, it's like a Brigadoon magical place.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's sorta like looking at, at the Pantheon where I go like, "How is this possible?"
Mhm. Yeah.
It's crazy, crazy, crazy good. But like I said, I've met plenty of people who say, "How can you like Venice? It stinks, and it's too many people, and
Mhm.
it's expensive," and,
Mm.
yep,
It's
yep, yep,
yes.
yep.
Yep, it's so worth it too.
It's so good.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, taking question 2 then and flipping it, and maybe that is part of your answer, but so question number
Mm.
3 is, of all the places in the world that you have been, but I add a caveat to this, if you only had 1 or 2 trips left in your lifetime, for whatever reason, doesn't have to be a morbid thing, but for one or
Oh.
you only have 1 or 2 trips left in your lifetime, what are those 1 or 2 places that you would absolutely have to go back to?
Oh, wow. I don't think there's a wrong answer here, Bill, on this one, because I don't know. I mean, I immediately think of about 6 or 8 and kind of feel the same way. I happen to be very partial to the Azores.
Uh,
Mhm.
okay, and
I love
why?
I love well, the whole reason that I went there in the first place is I'm half Portuguese. So, I made it a goal to, to get to Portugal. I've been to Portugal many times, and and then to the Azores because that's where my mother's family emigrated from, was from the Azores.
Okay.
And I just fell in love with it. And, it's funny. It's one of those crazy things. So, well, it wasn't the Azores trip, but the first time I went to Portugal, I flew over on TAP, which is like Air Portugal, and got on the plane with my wife. We sat next to each other, and all the stewards and stewardesses spoke Portuguese to me and English to my wife.
Oh my gosh.
And it happened everywhere I went to. If I'd go into a bakery to get a little pastry or something in the morning or a coffee or whatever,
Uh-huh.
speaking Portuguese to me every time.
Wow. How cool is that?
Yeah. So I was like, I'm home. But, my Portuguese is like, unfortunately, I can say all the things that my mother said to me when I was a kid, like, turn off the lights, you know, wash your hands.
Uh-huh.
And when someone's having a conversation with you, you can't answer with wash your hands.
No,
It's not,
you can,
you
but
can.
you
You
might
get
get a
some
funny
funny
look.
looks. Yeah, you definitely get some funny looks. But yeah, the Azores, I totally fell in love with. It is a bunch of islands, so it's not. People say Azore. Well, which island? We spent the most time at the biggest one because that's again where the family was from. That's called San Miguel. But we went to another island called Pico, where the monks figured out how to grow wine grapes on rocks.
Oh my gosh.
They didn't have soil, so I said, wow, they really wanted wine.
Yeah, they did.
You know, they figured
And
out.
some of the and some of the best wine, what I've heard at least, is the harder that the grapes have to work to stay
Yeah.
alive, the
Yes.
better quality the wine is.
Yeah, I've heard that as well. This particular wine that comes from growing on rocks is quite delicious. The problem is that they only make so much of it,
Mhm.
and the way the distribution goes is the island of Pico gets first dibs. If there's any left, then the capital island, San Miguel, gets second dibs. If there's any left, then the mainland of Portugal, specifically Lisbon, gets the third dibs. And there's generally not more than that. Maybe, you might go to, Obidos, or you might find it in um, some other cities, maybe in the Algarve or something. But it very rarely makes it out of Portugal and never makes it to the US. So believe me, I have tried very desperately to try to find this wine. Even to the point, in where I grew up in Mass and Rhode Island, there's a lot of Portuguese, and there's stores that just, they import everything from Portugal, and there's a wine store that does that. And so I said, "Oh, they'll have it for sure. I can go and get it." And drove to New Bedford, Massachusetts to try to get it. And they said, "Oh, no, we would love to get it, but we can't."
Wow. You need a concierge in Portugal to buy you a bottle and then
Yes.
ship it to you.
Well, we took as many as we were allowed to, but
Mhm.
yes, I'd have to do annual trips to go and load up on it. But it's amazing. And it's not like very expensive wine. It's because it's a local wine. So I don't know, maybe it's $15 a bottle or something. So it's not any kind of extravagance.
Mhm.
It's just a taste extravagance. It's its own unique taste that just, again, maybe it's because I'm a local, but
Right. It just
just
agrees with you.
it agrees with me. Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
So, love the answer. Is Portugal then? Are you just going to stick with that, or do you have a second one that's like
I'll
there?
just to make it easier, I'll say the Azores. I
Perfect.
would I would like to do that.
All right. Awesome. Okay. Question number 4 is just a little different. So now I'm going to say, of all the places in the world that you have never been, but the same caveat, you only have 1 or 2 trips left in your lifetime for whatever reason.
Yep.
What are those 1 or 2 places that you absolutely have to get to that you've never been?
Well, yeah, I think this is an easy one for me because, again, I mentioned my daughters have the travel bug, and my eldest daughter and her husband, the last 2 years, um, 2 years ago, they went to South Africa, and I've never been to South Africa. And how they described it in the pictures they came back with and the stories that they told made me put that high on the list. And then this year, their trip was New Zealand.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been to Australia, but I've never been to New Zealand. And so, again, the same thing. Their trips and their pictures and their stories have put that high on the list for me. Yes.
Yeah, makes sense. And I don't think I've talked to a person who's been to New Zealand who would say they wouldn't go back. I didn't get to explore as much of it as I would have liked to when I was there earlier this year, but it's a beautiful place, beautiful people, great food, really
Yeah.
incredible.
Did you do both north and south, or did you just?
So
No.
I actually pretty much stayed right around Wellington. It's where my daughter
Okay.
lives currently.
Oh my gosh, she lives there.
Yeah, yeah. Not for much longer. She's been there for a couple, 2, 3 years, and they're
Oh,
moving to
okay.
Costa Rica here in October. So,
Whoa,
yep.
that's gonna be a change.
And we've been there a number of times. So she knows all about it. Her boyfriend maybe doesn't,
Oh,
but I'm sure she's told him a lot of stories. So,
yeah, and it's there's a similarity between the two countries because as in New Zealand there's sort of there's a northern and a southern experience, right?
yeah,
And then I think it's similar in Costa Rica, right? You kind of have that
it is
northern.
West Coast and East Coast more.
Yeah, 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 yeah. You have that. It's sort of like jungle or beach,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I hope
Yeah.
they enjoy it. So, well, Belize is your place for me to visit. That's
Yes, I love that.
yeah, me too.
Fabulous.
So, listen, this has been fantastic. The question 5, the one I wrap with, is super, super simple because you already have the answers. You know the answer. And it is simply, what do you have planned on your docket for the rest of this year, maybe into 2027? Where are you going?
Yeah, in days today, Monday. So in 5 days, heading to the Emerald Island. So we're gonna go to Dublin and then Killarney, Dingle, Galway, Connemara. Spend
Awesome.
some time in Ireland. That's gonna be, like I said, that's coming up in a week. December, we are just making plans now to try to do some of the Christmas market things
Mm.
we're thinking probably Austria.
I can show you pictures from Vienna.
Yeah.
My goodness. Just wait.
Yeah, I'm happy to say we did a trip to Vienna a year ago.
For the Christmas markets, though.
Not for the Christmas markets. We did it. Yeah,
Yeah.
And I fell in love with Vienna. And anyway, so yes, we're gonna do the Christmas markets. In Vienna is definitely on the list. Maybe Salzburg, probably a third location. There's some people that want to do some skiing. So
I was going to say, get to Prague if you can get to Prague.
we did, yeah. Again, we did that last year.
Okay.
So it's not as probably won't happen on this trip. But
Mhm.
I agree, absolute stunning town.
Yeah. Again, just I was purely thinking about Christmas markets, but yeah,
Yeah.
no, awesome.
Yeah. So that's happening, and then the farthest I could say is I know in February we're gonna go to Florence in February, and probably we'll tack something on to that one as well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Man, I'm jealous in a way. I have my own exploring to do, but some of the places that you've been and the number of times, and just, I'm going to get there. I'm going to get there. So, but
Yeah, well, I'm gonna root for you.
thanks, Paul. I appreciate it. You and I are definitely going to stay in touch.
Oh yeah.
And I'm definitely going to have you back down the road at some point. You're going to keep traveling. Plus, you have so many more stories that we didn't even touch on.
I
But
know.
thank you for taking this much time with us. As we wrap things here, do you have any final words, any last things you'd like to say before we hit stop on the episode?
Yeah, I'll tell you two quick things if I could. One is I have a little gift for your audience, if that's of interest.
Oh my
And
gosh.
then,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, yeah. And then one last thought after that, but so if something we've talked about today resonates with you, I put together a free guide called The Gift of Time Together. And it's a simple 3-step guide to creating unforgettable trips and lasting memories with your favorite people. And you can download it for free. And it's gift, like in present, gift.travelvillaguide.com. So it's like our website, but it has the word gift in front of it. So it's gift.travelvillaguide.com.
It's
And
awesome.
yeah, if it helps you create stories that you'll still be telling, then it's done, exactly what I hoped it would do. And I would say my final thought, Bill, is that I would say again to your audience, if if you've been thinking about taking one of these trips, by that I mean a multi-generational trip or a family reunion or a friends reunion, milestone anniversary, I would say, don't wait for the perfect time, because the older we get, the harder it becomes to get our favorite people together in the same place at the same time. So if you've been thinking about that, I would say start the conversation now. Years ago, I almost made this mistake myself. I had a chance to visit the Galapagos with a group of friends, and I almost turned it down because I was busy. And I'm so glad I didn't, because I would have missed one of the most interesting places on planet Earth. And I also would have missed the chance to swim with sea lions,
Wow.
which was kind of fun. And I remember one swam right up to me underwater, stopped, looked me straight in the eye, as if to say, "Hey, watch this." Then swam over to my wife and jumped completely over her, like something out of a Flipper movie.
Wow.
And everyone on the beach burst into applause. And, I was still talking about it, 5 years later or whatever it was. And I'm talking about it not because I went to the Galapagos, but,
That could have
because,
anywhere that would have happened would have been
yeah. But
or something
I
like
was sharing it, back to what we talked about earlier.
that.
The
Yeah.
thing that made it like super extra special was, sharing it with, people that I love. And that's what I want from everyone, for everyone that we work with or that we don't work with, a week or two where, ordinary life can wait and everyone who matters to you is under one roof and you're fully present, fully alive, and in the middle of a story you'll still be telling years from now, just like we are right now.
Yeah, man. Really awesome. Thank you again so much, Paul. I can't thank you enough taking this much time. And good luck with everything that you have going on. And yeah, we'll talk soon.
Thank you, Bill. I really enjoyed it.
And there's another episode of the Where Have You Been podcast in the books. Thank you so much for listening today. There was another great guest with some great stories, as always. And I hope that you will support all of the guests by checking out the show notes and going to their web pages, seeing any socials and projects that they may have going on. And please, again, I'll ask as always to like, subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. It really does help to allow the podcast to grow and reach more people, and I appreciate you for doing that. Also, if you haven't done so, check out the website, whydpodcast.com, where you can find blog posts. If you'd like to be a guest, please register to be a guest on the site, and check out the merch page. There's some really cool stuff if you're interested in representing the pod, along with some other cool travel items and apparel that I'm working on every day as well. Join me again next week for another great guest with more incredible stories. New episodes drop every Sunday just after midnight Eastern Time. Until then, thank you for being here, and have a great day.